if sales and marketing use the same words but mean different things, you get friction, wasted time, and missed revenue. Welcome to Pass the Pitch. I'm Anna Frazzetto, and I'm here today with Leslie Vickrey, CEO of ClearEdge. This is episode 1 of our 6-part series on sales and marketing alignment, topics that we're both very passionate about. We're starting with the things that break alignment faster than any tool. So I'm going to look at it from the revenue executive side, execution side, and Leslie is going to come at it from the marketing and demand side. Together, we see where alignment breaks in real life and what fixes actually stick. So if sales and marketing use the same words but mean different things, you get friction, wasted time, and missed revenue. So today, we're going to fix that with shared language that leads to shared outcomes. So Leslie, welcome to the show.
Oh, Anna, thank you so much for having me. And I'm really hopeful based on that. The fix. That's very optimistic. So let's get to it.
Yes. Let's get started. Your thoughts on, fundamentally what you think goes wrong.
Yeah, well, I think first of all, Anna, the foundation, often if it's not set up properly, then it gets really sloppy and everything kind of downstream starts to get messy from there. And it starts at the beginning of everything, right? So if you can start at the foundation and get it correct, I think that will avoid, I know we'll talk about where we call the blame game kind of between two sides. At the end of the day, if we all go into something open-minded with, we have the same ultimate goal and intention, which is to be successful as individuals, as teams, and as a company. If you start with that foundation, then everything should go the right way.
Yeah, and that's such a great point. I think a lot of times when leaders say what we need alignment, they usually mean we need pipeline we can trust, right? We need predictability, right? We need to make sure that we understand our conversion. Like if we think, our rule of thumb is if we have 10 leads, we convert 3 of those 10 leads, but we need to have that predictability. We need to have fewer internal collisions. Often you see that when too many people are involved or not knowing when the right handoffs are. So you cannot get those outcomes without clear definitions.
Yeah, 100%. Otherwise, it really starts that blame game or the blame loop, Anna, if you don't have those clear definitions and on the same page. So, for example, marketing tends to run a campaign. In fact, I was just looking at results from a QBR for one of our clients, and I was looking at the campaign results, and the leads coming in were they're incredible. So we're going to say these leads are hot. And then it'll be interesting to see when sales looks at them and they will ask, well, who are these people and why are we engaging them now? What is this all about? So either sales ignores the list to begin with and or sends a generic message and nothing happens. So really clarifying what the rules are and so forth. So for example, then we may come back and say, sales isn't following up. And then sales will say, marketing is just sending us junk. These aren't really qualified leads. So both teams are working hard. And again, we have the same intention of what that end result should be. There aren't villains or bad people here. There just isn't a shared definition of what good looks like.
Right. And, I'm a big fan, based on personal experience, but also what I see works really well with organizations is where sales and marketing are aligned from a management perspective, right? Where there's that direct connection, because then you feel like if you have one leader, you can kind of control some of those blame loops that take place that hopefully they're prevented. I think a good place for us to talk a little bit about a framework and 4 definitions that we have a tendency to agree on, right? So if we look at the 4 definitions, we talk about ICP, right? Who's the best fit? And we're going to get into each of these in a little bit more detail. Qualified, what's the signals as far as the real next step? What's the handoff? How does it move within the organization? And then, of course, last but not least, like the shared outcome, one scoreboard between sales and marketing. Leslie, maybe you can start talking a little bit about ICPs.
Sure. And you're right. I think having those four definitions that you can agree on, and we do agree on, is critical, but you have to take the time to really define them. So, your ideal client profile or ICP, it's not just anyone who could use us. And we've, Anna, I know both seen that trap before where sales reps will go out or marketing will target everyone and anyone who could possibly buy the service, but you really want to get closest to who's most likely to buy the service and why. Who will best win and win consistently our services? How can sales do that and set us up for success? So a strong ICP typically includes, let's say if it were an industry focus, and you could say, wow, when I looked back at all of our clients, 60% are in financial services. And if I think about case studies or stories I can tell, use cases, they're all in financial services. Okay, so now you're starting to frame it. Let's look at financial services. When you look back at those clients, what's the company size of those, or what stage are they in? Are they startups? Have they been around for a while? Well established brands? Who are they selling into? So you start digging in a little bit more to understand, wow, we're actually really successful with, enterprise size, financial services. So big banks, big investment firms, those are really our target. Look at where you've had success and what the commonalities are between those. And then now you look at, well, who's buying from us at those companies or in those industries, and who's really the influencer, who's the decision maker. And it may surprise you as you look at that, and you may say, well, gosh, no wonder in my pipeline I have all of these opportunities that aren't closing. It's actually not the closer or the person who's going to make the final decision. I've got a great relationship with all influencers. How do I get to the person actually making the decision? So you really want to understand, again, the industry, the use case, company size, or stage of the company. Maybe stage could be private equity backed or publicly traded company or startup. What stage are they where you have a story to tell? And then the trigger events again. Why are they buying from us? And at what moment in time are they buying from us? Is it because they just launched a new product? I'll use us as an example. A branding, marketing agency, digital agency, focused on full service marketing. A lot of times on branding, when people come to us, it's because maybe they were just acquired by private equity. Maybe they've merged a few companies together. Perhaps they have a whole new executive team. Maybe they're entering into new markets or new industries. There are trigger events that usually call to when someone would make a decision to do something. Do you know that about your ICP? And what are you solving for that they'll actually pay for? So, not the, gosh, that'd be really nice to have if we had this, but what are you solving that they will actually pay for? Again, think through what's closest to the dollar. And then what would disqualify you? If we were going through this whole process, why would they maybe not work with us? Is it because we don't have global capabilities? What is it that more than likely those companies will need that maybe you don't have? And document all of this. So you want to make sure you're protecting your time and your brand. Do you have the right people you're selling into? Can you answer yes to these go scenarios? Protect your time and then protect your brand when going after those.
So you bring up so many great points. My goodness, I think we could spend like the next hour just talking about everything that you've highlighted. One thing that comes to mind as you were talking is quality over quantity. I think a lot of times people are looking at their target list and who they want to market after, and they want to have thousands of emails that go out, and that's not success. You got to be strategic, kind of like a fine tooth comb, and understanding who really would buy from you. And last but not least, it's the whole component of better qualifying. Because if you think about it, if you're going through this effort with the ICP, on the back end, or the output of this is going to give you qualified leads that you can really sell to and close, right? Which is the ultimate goal on the revenue generating side. Often on the sales side, I'll do training following like MEDIC principles, which ICP is a strong component of that in making sure you understand your economic buyer, what the decision criteria is, what the decision process is, what the client's pain points are, or so on and so forth. Let's talk a little bit about, qualified and qualification. Qualified is not that somebody just clicked on something that you sent out. That's not enough of a signal. But a lot of times sales will respond saying, "Oh my goodness, they're interested." But you need to really kind of help discover, does it fit the ICP? So everything that Leslie just went through. And do they have the problem that we can solve? Right? Like, do we understand what their pain point is? And then that'll tell you what the next motion is going to be and why they need to be able to act now. Leslie, maybe you could talk a little bit about handoffs.
Sure, sure. And Anna, I want to reference something that you mentioned earlier too, when thinking about targeting and the ICP and do they have the problem writing the why buy messages? Why should they buy from us now and no one else? What is it that we offer that no one else has that they can do? And again, always thinking closer to the dollar and being really clear, because I'll give a quick example. Again, thinking about product versus services, there are some products being sold, and in our industry, the talent industry, that many people could buy. You could have thousands of people who could buy it, and it's easy to qualify those, and the sales cycle is fast. You either have, for example, a CRM, maybe you're using HubSpot, Salesforce, Bullhorn, whatever it may be, and you have an ATS, whatever your ATS may be. You have those two things, and the question is, are they connected or not? They either are or they aren't. So you either have a CRM, you either have an ATS, they're either connected or they're not. And almost every company in staffing could answer those questions to say whether or not they have that. So in that case, if you're selling a product that solves that connection issue, you could reach thousands of people. If you're selling a service, you want to be really clear about what that service is that you're selling and who will buy it, how long your sales cycle is, and be really clear about that, because more than likely you're not selling to the thousands. It could be hundreds, it could be less than that. So you want to be really specific on that ICP. It's really critical. Why would they buy from you now? And then handing it off, to your point, marketing, handing it to sales and what information should be included or how fast sales responds. That's really a great point when you're working on campaigns together or setting up, always on sales campaigns, or it could be campaigns to past clients, lost clients, whatever that may be. You really want to make sure that you sit down and you understand what is a marketing qualified lead and what is a sales qualified lead. And when it turns into a sales qualified lead, when do we hand that off to sales? And then in the sales side, what do you exactly need to be successful? So we know when we're capturing that lead information. And listen, it's an art and a science. If you ask too many questions of the person giving you their contact information, they may not do it. So you want to get just enough to make sure sales has what they need. And then arm sales with a response so they can respond within an agreed upon time. Is that 12 hours? Is that 24 hours? And then do you have a system in place to make sure you stay on top of that? For example, we're working with someone right now where if leads come in, it's automatically going into the system and being tracked. And then if for some reason, we talked about triggers earlier, if for some reason I don't respond within a certain amount of time, there's a trigger that is sent that both marketing and sales will see to make sure that someone gets back to that prospect. Because you know what? If you're not, your competitor may be, and you don't want to risk that you're not. And then also just understand tracking rejection. Why did they say no? Why did they decide not to meet, or why did they go with someone else? You got to understand the yeses and the nos in the process, but working hand in hand with sales and marketing on that is critical.
And I think you also highlight, you mentioned this earlier, the importance of the data being accurate. I know that's one thing that I browbeat into salespeople all the time, is the accuracy of the CRM. Because if the CRM, if you think about it, it becomes a snowball effect, right? If you have bad data in the CRM, and you're using AI to help you craft messages to your clients, guess what? AI is not going to clean the bad data for you. They're just going to add on to the bad data and create bad messaging or bad emails that you would be sending out. And it also creates the disconnects, right? The disconnects between sales and marketing.
You're right, 100%.
So shared outcomes, the last of the framework. Sales and marketing should not have to compete as far as scoreboards, right? And this is why I talk about management all reporting under one structure, one organizational chart. It helps to specifically in this area. But what are some of the shared outcomes that can be included? So, for example, it could be ICP meetings that are held, right? Because this means it's not only gone from MQL to SQL, but it's also gone to an actual meeting that you're having with the client. Opportunities created from the ICP. So that gives the accuracy of the ICP, which marketing spends so much time in helping to build that for sales. Conversion rate. This is one of my most favorite topic. I was working in a company where sales and marketing were not reporting under the same structure. And marketing was just incented on creating more leads. And then I asked a simple question, well, how many of these leads are actually converting? And that wasn't being tracked. So quite frankly, I don't care if we, generate 2,000 leads. If nothing is converting, it doesn't really matter. And last but not least, how does this translate to the pipeline and the revenue, right? Revenue at the end of the day answers all questions.
Exactly. Exactly.
Leslie, maybe you could talk a little bit about like good versus not so great, on an ICP front.
Right. Well, Anna, it's interesting because, yes, the shared outcomes are critical. You want to be on the same page with that. And you mentioned, not having competing scoreboards. At the end of the day, marketing's role, and again, I think it varies on product, services, software, tech, all of the things on what marketing's role is and the influence it can have in being a growth driver. But at the end of the day, marketing should be influencing the sales. So for example, on your scoreboards, you could show if it were just sales working on it or marketing influenced, the deal is 30% more likely to close because it was marketing influenced. And all that means is we were able to hit that prospect more with things like podcasts, LinkedIn, SEO, LLMs, all of the things where they can be reached. Marketing played a role in helping drive that. So there isn't competition or trying to say one is better than the other. It's really how can we influence that? Just like we want to influence retention within a company through internal communications or top of the funnel through brand building. But when it comes to ICP, what's good or what's bad or right and so forth, when you think of ICPs, if you're too narrow, then that can be tricky to target even when it comes to campaigns. So, for example, a potential narrow one might be we're only focusing on mid market companies that need growth. Okay, well, every company is looking to grow. So, are you basically saying we're going to target every single company that we qualify as mid market? Something that could be a little tighter would be services firms. So, that's really specific. Services firms. You could go even narrower in a specific industry, technology services firms, financial, whatever that may be, healthcare, and then look at size. So we're best when we're working with companies that are 200 to 2,000 employees and understand why you're best at that and have the case studies to support it. That sales led motion or, stalled growth, leadership change, maybe they're going through some process changes in their company in the next 90 days, but there's some form of change within that business. So they're looking to grow. They've changed something. Maybe they were bought out by private equity, and then they're going to have changes in the C suite or things that will happen, perhaps with their go to market. What are those kind of change things? Or you're reading their earnings reports and anything they've put out and you can tell, wow, they've not only stalled growth, but they're regressing. They're getting smaller. Look for those key signals that make it a really great ICP for you, where you have those stories of success that you can share with them.
Yeah, great points. I mean, it's all about the research and really getting specific and making sure that you have the details. So it's almost like sometimes I get asked the question, are you drilling down too much? Where then you're screening out all potential opportunities, but the reality is you're screening in more opportunities by being that specific and going through that.
Why waste your time going so broad to companies who won't buy for you, with you, from you? You're actually looking for those closest to the dollar, most likely to work with you.
Excellent. So looking at qualified, as far as like what's a bad, this is my favorite in working with sales teams is where they attended our webinar. So therefore they got to be interested in what we do for a living. Clearly that's not the case. Or I love when you do pipeline reviews, not to get a little bit off tangent, where they say they're definitely going to buy from us because they love me. We have such a great relationship, so it's definitely going to work. But that's bad qualification. It does not help in you being able to revenue project what are the potential opportunities for you as a salesperson or for the organization. Something tighter is how closely do they match the ICP? Right? Has this potential prospect showed any intent? Like they have requested a checklist that you were talking about on your website, or maybe at the end of the webinar, you asked the question if anybody was interested in this particular checklist. Do they ask questions in regards to any interactive social media where they're asking questions about implementation or what to do next? Those are all the buying signals that are tight, and therefore you can definitely say it's a more qualified opportunity for you to go after.
Yep. I would agree.
I feel like we really have done so much here in our first session. I think action item for anybody listening is create a one-page shared language sheet with ICP, qualified handoff rules, and the shared outcomes, the framework that we laid out. It doesn't have to be perfect. You want to make it usable. And then it's something that you can monitor. It should be an evergreen process that you get to monitor. And a question that we would ask you is, what is the one sales and marketing term that causes the most confusion on your team right now? And make sure to comment, and we'll get back to you the next time around. But thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you for episode 2.
Thank you, Anna.